Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at one of the stakes races on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. It is the Suncoast Stakes, one of the early preps for the Kentucky Oaks. And Craig, for a listed stakes race in February, this one has drawn a star-studded field featuring last year's 2-year-old filly champion Wonder Wheel.
Yeah, it sure has. Seeing her, we also have Dreaming of Julia coming out of a win in the Grade 2 Demoiselle. So, and I don't think that the race is just down to those two either, even though they're obviously the top two choices on the morning line as we look at it. I do think there is some depth to this field as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking forward to this matchup between Wonder Wheel and that promising filly drawn towards the outside, Julia Shine. You could see they're listed at even money and 5-2 respectively on the morning line. There are some other runners in this race that certainly have a chance, that have shown some promise, but you could see they're all listed at much bigger prices given the reputations that these two come into the race with. Before we get to the individual contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And Craig, we've got a few horses stretching out in distance, some that could show speed. So not a big surprise to see that fast pace flag showing up. But I think what is a positive for Wonder Wheel, who is shown in second on the pace projector, is she does have some versatility, whereas she's probably not going to be too affected by a potential fast pace.
Right. We're going to look at her PPs a little later in this video and can talk more about it, but she has shown quite a bit of versatility, particularly in her last two races.
And you might notice that the number 9, Julia Shining, is not even depicted on this pace projector. That's because her early pace rating is so low compared to the rest of the field that she is technically off this graphic. So she figures to be coming from towards the back of the pack in this race, would appreciate any hitting that happens up front. And let's take a look at another feature in Timeform US, a new feature, and that is the finish projector. You can access this by navigating to your DRF mobile PPs and tapping on the Timeform US tab. And this is the Timeform US algorithm selecting the most likely winners of this race. And Craig, interestingly, lands on a bit of an upset here. The number 8, Ticker Tape Home. I'll let you talk a little bit about why this might be the case, but she is a horse who will be making her dirt debut in here.
Yeah, the Timeform US power picks, and in this case, the finish projector, use mostly the speed figures. They don't do a lot of differentiating among surface. And Ticker Tape Home has definitely run the fastest speed figures, particularly in the last couple of races, but they have come on a different surface. We'll talk about that as we get to her. I think what's most notable about this finish projector, other than having the long shot picked on top, is that we have that second choice, Dreaming of Julia, shown way towards the back.
I'll get you to get her name right by the end of this preview, Craig. Julia Shining out of the damn Dreaming of Julia. Yes, you're correct. She comes in with some lower speed figures. So she is shown, I think, back in 7th place on this finish projector. We'll get to her in just a little bit, but let's begin with Wonder Wheel, the likely favorite in this race, last year's juvenile champion filly. And we're actually going to take a look at her race 2 back. And I know, Craig, you wanted to show the replay of the Alcibiades, her prep race for the Breeders' Cup juvenile fillies, because this was the day that they got aggressive with her from a rail post position. She's drawn the rail again, so it wouldn't be a big surprise to see Tyler Gaffaleo and send her forward from this inside post.
Right. It was kind of tempting to go with that Breeders' Cup race, but it just seems so different from what she's probably going to do on Saturday. This one just seemed to have a lot more resemblance to what we saw in that Alcibiades, where she drew the rail just as she does here, had to show speed to not get too shuffled back, and was really game to the wire to hold off a couple horses who were really flying late, including Chop Chop. So we could have shown either one, but I thought that effort was just as good and really showed her versatility. We talked about that earlier, and you can see in the juvenile, she was way near the back of the field. She was able to work a good trip, and I would like to think some of that is due to her good tactical speed, where you can kind of move on her when you want to, and that's exactly what Tyler Gaffaleo did that day. So she is obviously a very strong contender in here, and I do think the inside draw forces her hand a bit, but I don't think it's a situation that's particularly bad.
Yeah, Tyler Gaffalione gave her an excellent ride last time in that Breeders' Cup victory, but he also had the horse to take him through those holes after she got steadied back into the clubhouse turn. She adapted really well and showed that versatility where she was able to come from off the pace, going to plan B for the connection. So really impressive victory last time. As you said, she showed that other dimension in the Alcibiades. So it's just nice to see a favorite coming in with multiple trip options in a race that appears to have some other pace signed on. So Wonder Wheel definitely looks like the horse to beat in this Suncoast Stakes. Let's take a look at her main rival, drawn all the way towards the outside, the number 9, Julia Shining, and we'll check out her last victory in the Demoiselle Stakes over a sloppy track at Aqueduct. That is her all the way on the left of the screen, coming about 7 wide into the stretch to make this big late run to get up. The question, Craig, is how good was this Demoiselle overall? Because it got a pretty low speed figure, and we haven't seen too many horses come back out of this race to say otherwise.
Exactly. We've had 4 horses run back, and they've basically matched their speed figures, 3 of the 4. One did make a nice step up, Royal Spa, but when I say a nice step up, it was only because she ran so slow. She got an 84 behind Julia Shining. In that, so yeah, I'm not too sure. She wasn't one of the ones that came back, I should say. She stepped up on that day, but the others have just kind of came back and ran basically the same speed figure they did in the Demoiselle. So personally, this is a horse I don't want any parts of at a short price. She can definitely improve her speed figure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I wouldn't base that purely on the 84. But what concerns me is the turn back in distance. The distance is something that I think is really going to help her. We see she's by Curlin out of an AP Indy mare, Dreaming of Julia, who I kept calling her earlier. But that turn back is concerning to me. It's not just like it's even to a mile and a 16th. It's all the way back to a mile and 40 yards. And I just wonder if when she gets revved up and gets her kick going, the race won't already be over.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about this filly. On one hand, I agree with everything you're saying about the speed figures and her probably being an underlay just based on the perceived potential. On the other hand, I've watched some of her recent workouts. It does feel to me, just watching her over time, that she's figuring the game out and she's getting better. And I do expect her to take a step forward off of that Demoiselle victory. She's just going to have to take such a big step forward to usurp Wonder Wheel. So I'm not sure the value is going to be there, but I do expect her to run pretty well on Saturday. Let's move on to some of the other horses in this race that will be bigger prices. We have 3 of them coming out of the Gasparilla Stakes, the one-turn prep for this Suncoast Stakes. And we'll take a look at the stretch drive there, and a little bit of an upset as Opus 42 got the job done here narrowly by a nose over Charlie's Wish, who was also in here. Both of these horses, Craig, they're going to have to prove that they can get some added ground.
They are. They've obviously, this was a 7 furlong race. It was one where I think they were both finishing off the race pretty good, the top 2 finishers. So I don't have huge questions. When you look at the breeding, it certainly seems like it would be possible within their scope to get the longer distance. And what I did like about the races, and we see it here with the winner, Opus 42, is that big 97 speed figure, which isn't all that far behind what we've seen from Wonder Wheel.
Yeah, that's the thing about Wonder Wheel. She's not coming in with that great of a speed figure edge, and I think that goes back to the finish projector we talked about towards the start. On speed figure, she's not dominant, but she's certainly beaten everybody around 2 turns that has challenged her. And as for these horses coming out of the Gasparilla, we're looking at the PPs of Opus 42 here. I've already been wrong about her because I thought she was more of a turf horse, and she's actually improved on the dirt. We'll see if she can handle some added ground. We can also check out the PPs of Charlie's Wish. She's the other one stretching out, who was in that photo last time in that Gasparilla Stakes. She is by First Dude, and she's actually a full sister to a horse that was a dirt router. So there is some evidence that this filly could go longer, but she's another one that's just going to have to get a little faster on the stretch out. And then, Craig, the third horse coming out of the Gasparilla, who we haven't yet mentioned, is Dreaming of Snow. She is by Jess's Dream, that Florida sire. So she seems like another one that has some things to prove on the stretch out and distance, especially given the fact that she was fading in the late stages last time. But on the top side of the pedigree, there is some evidence that maybe more ground could work for her.
Yeah, it is always going to be a little bit of a guessing game. Of those three horses coming out, I prefer Opus 42. I just like the way she finished off that race while showing good tactical speed. The others, I have a little bit more concern. Dreaming of Snow, for sure, which is she just kind of looks like a sprinter to me, the way she runs. I'm not all that familiar with the breeding, but just not super excited about her stretching out. And I could almost say the same for Charlie's Wish, a horse who had been backing up in his prior sprint race, or before her prior sprint races, before she reverted to a closing style last time, and it seemed to really fit her. But she just seemed to have more of that one-turn sprinter's closer's kick to me. I'd be less likely to think she's going to handle the 2 turns.
Let's move on to a horse stretching out in distance who I'm a little bit more confident will get the added ground, and that's the number 4, Champagne Calling. We'll take a look at her last race when she broke her maiden at Tampa Bay Downs, going that same 7 furlong distance as the horse is coming out of the Gasparilla. And it's unclear what she was beating from a quality standpoint here, Craig, but I do like the way that she keeps running on at a steady pace through the wire. At mid-stretch, it briefly looks like the number 6, who's ranging up into second, is going to take a good run at her, but she maintains her margin through the finish line, just striding out like a horse that is supposed to handle added ground. And that would not be a big surprise at all, given that she's by Empire Maker. So this is one that seems to have some upside for the stretch out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that maiden race she comes out of is actually pretty strong. We didn't print the chart for this video, but if you pull it up in Timeform US, the runner-up stretched out, improved their speed figure from an 86 all the way to a 92. Another horse came out of it and won her next start. So I do think it was a fairly strong maiden race. And that 91 speed figure, again, it's not that big of a gap, particularly when you're talking about lately race 3-year-olds to get to the low hundreds that Wonder Wheel ran on her best figure day.
Another filly coming out of a Tampa maiden win is Guns and Graces, who is going out for the Chad Brown stable. And Craig, this is going to be a rare Chad Brown runner that goes off at a decent price, probably double-digit odds, but it kind of makes sense because she just has not run particularly fast in either of her 2 starts.
And unlike Champagne Calling, she comes out of a maiden race, which has not been good at all. The 3 horses who have run back have basically repeated their very slow figures, finished up the track. None of them have broken their maiden. So it would be a stretch for me. It wouldn't shock me if she improves for Chad Brown, but it would shock me if she improved that much to be a serious contender.
Let's finish up with a couple horses coming from different circuits. The number 7, Fast Tracked. We'll take a look at her last race when she was second in the Maryland Juvenile Fillies. She's made both of her prior starts at Laurel, and this was a pretty good effort in the slop as she stayed on for second behind the previously undefeated Malibu Moonshine, who did begin her career going 3 for 3. And Fast Tracked here, Craig, she took that bump that you saw at the top of the stretch, but I thought she regathered herself and stayed on pretty well after that to get up for the runner-up spot here.
Yeah, I thought she ran okay. I was actually surprised to see the morning line as high as it is, but I guess when you have 2 horses that are going to take a lot of money, it makes sense. She did run a 93 speed figure. It doesn't seem like it's that far. The stretch out is obviously going to be an issue, as is switching back over to a fast track where she didn't run quite as well in a maiden claimer. So the odds fit. She's not really for me, but I could see somebody wanting to take a stab with her.
Yeah, if this race hadn't come up so deep with those 2 pretty strong-looking favorites, I might have given her a longer look in here because I do think out of distance is going to help her, but she does seem like a better candidate to snag a minor reward in this spot. And we'll finish things up with the number 8, Ticker Tape Home. She's the horse that was predicted as the winner on the finish projector, and you can see why as we take a look at her Timeform US PPs here. Those 108 and 110 Timeform US speed figures are the 2 best numbers in this field. The problem is they were earned on turf and synthetic. And Craig, when I look at this filly's pedigree, it does say to me that turf and synth might be her preferred surfaces.
I agree with that. It seems a stretch. I understand with 3-year-olds, fillies and colts, connections often want to take chances. See early in the year, maybe just, you never know. You can't always go by the breeding, but this one seems a bit suspect to me. Particularly, she's only tried 2 turns one time. It didn't go very well. She was backing up in the stretch, so she has 2 hurdles to tackle: surface and distance. So at only 8-1 on the morning line, despite being the pick on the Timeform US finish projector, she's not really for me in here.
And she is the other Mark Casse runner in here. And it would be somewhat surprising if Mark Casse was running a filly that he thought was going to love the dirt against his 2-year-old filly champion Wonder Wheel, kicking off her 3-year-old campaign here. So let's throw up our picks for this race. And Craig and I are pretty much in agreement. We both have that favorite, Wonder Wheel, on top. Craig, you're a little bit more against the other favorite, Julia Shining, than I am. I do have her in the mix in third. We both have the long shot, the number 4, Champagne Calling, in there. She seems like one that if you want to use an exactas and trifectas, could add some value.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's not that I think that, let me get it right, Julia Shining is going to run poorly. I just think it's going to take her a little while to get going. Maybe the workouts have improved. It's still a distance that's much shorter than she'd prefer. So I'm just going to try to get her out of the exacta when I play. I do think that the 2-horse Opus 42 is going to run pretty well. I like the inside draw. So she would be one I used. And you've convinced me a little bit on the 4-horse as well.
Well, Wonder Wheel is on top for both Craig and I in the Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.